The Irish fairy folk. Sure, where are they, like? They're supposed to be here. Could have been taken by the fairies, by. See that fellow over there? Who? Mad lad chewing on his shoe. Nope, he's not mental at all. Just the way of the fairies. Two examples of still used common, somewhat paraphrased sayings about fairies still used here in modern Ireland today. People may have no idea what it means when they do say it, but it is still said, and it does mean something. From what seems like an endless collection and array of fantastic mythical creatures and supernatural beings here in Ireland, especially with the fairies, they aren't just one of many, they're it. The fairies have taken up residency long ago here in Ireland, lads. They're not leaving anytime soon. They've been here longer than light was bright and sound deafened. But out of all these beings, they're the most interesting, yet absolutely terrifying. Yes, today when we think of fairies, we think of the Disney-fied concept, the beautiful hair and the blushing mascara, the small winged creatures who like to hang around with young boys in green tights. Pure Tinkerbells like. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Hearing stories as a child used to completely freak me out. So forget Disney, forget fairy godmothers, forget the fabulous ballrooms and them gowns. These creatures are older than language itself and do not like to be messed with. Not one flippin' bit. The fair folk range from the best known around the world, from your pot of gold leprechauns to the bone-chilling, wailing, infamous banshee. And the interesting and most thing that people do not know about herself, the banshee, is that her name actually means banshee, woman of the fairy mound, or fairy woman. And once she sees you and you get away from her, she will follow and follow and follow until she finds you. Other times she's a beautiful young woman washing her hair at a lake or a stream, singing quietly to herself. But most tales, myths and legends attached to the banshee are quite chilling. Their blood-curdling, heart-stopping scream echoes through any soul that hears it. And yes, as the old story goes, someone that you know will die that night. We'll discuss her ladyship, the banshee, in depth in another video. And just back to the washing of the old hair in the lake or stream. You never see that anymore. Feels just like the Sri Lankan still fishing, you know? It's kind of disappearing, like, not cool. Speaking on both these globally famous fairies and how popular they are, surprisingly, they're actually not the most famous here in Ireland. The Puka, the Changelings, and the Dullen, just to name a few, seem to have far more fans and believers. So today, we're going to talk about the beginnings and the influence of the fairy folk here on the Emerald Isle, the hill people, the Sidhe, the luck-giving, cheekiness and mischievous, but yet sometimes cruel beings who still haunt the hills and the wild Irish countryside and the depths of our imagination. It is said at dawn and at dusk, it is the best time to get a look at some of the fairy people, and when they enter and leave our plane of existence from the fairy realm, but more on that in a few. Although there are dozens of countries that have fairy folklore deep rooted into their culture, psyche and traditions, none are as strong, rich and ingrained as the Irish. Sadly, there is no way to trace back just as far and along these tales of the hill people whenever they began in any part of the world. But it has been understood that these stories are thousands of years old. Each tribe that came to the island of Ireland brought their own myths and legends, such as the Celtic with the Tuatha Dé Danann. The Sidhe is what my ancestors, the Irish people, used to call them. And the Sidhe, of course, is derived from an Irish word which literally means a mound of earth. So old Irish beliefs of the fair folk is still that they live inside the hills and the mounds of earth in the surrounding countryside. There is still a strong belief today by a lot of people in the good people or the people of the hills throughout Ireland. Of course, nothing to what it once was, but perhaps this is what they want you to think. And just like us, the Sídhe do come in many shapes and many sizes, big and small, and just like us, some are good and some are very, very dangerous. Usually, fairy folk is a combination of Celtic, Greco-Roman and Germanic traditions. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the Irish people were hugely superstitious, and I guess still are today, but not just by the Sídhe, but used to be by many other mythical creatures and supernatural beings. To our ancestors, and I'm speaking for many of us, wherever you're listening to this was their religion, their way of life, and they held their traditions in very high regard, not wanting to anger, invoke, or insult any of these creatures. Beliefs, offerings, and traditions were very important to them. Different parts of Ireland would have different beliefs, but mostly very similar, such as leaving out pieces of food, like berries or bread and a bowl of milk. People would not throw water outside the back or the front of their house, just in case a fairy was walking by and would slip and fall and curse that person's home. So, some of the Sídhe were actually quite friendly. Good laugh, up for an old bit of crack like, wearing bright clothes, and yet others were described as tall, long, warped, horrifying looking creatures with arched backs and large black claws we would not want to run into in the blackness of a night on your own, especially down a dark, rural Irish road. Man, still freaky. We have enough problems these days on modern Irish roads, worrying about texting drivers and rogue rams. Nowadays though, the Irish fairy folk rarely resemble the original representation of the Sídhe. The small Irish winged fairy and pixie only came into public consciousness after being introduced in artwork in the 19th century. The original Irish fairies possessed supernatural powers and the capacity of flying without any wings. So no wands, no sassy attitudes, and again, no young boys in green tights. As I mentioned, these were core Irish beliefs for centuries, but when the Irish became ensnared, enslaved and Christianized by the Christ God in the 5th century, when the church literally outlawed and punished those who tried to practice their ancient heritage, and even those who still left out offerings, the fair folk beliefs and traditions had been driven underground. But the Church of Christ could not get rid of these embedded parts in the Irish people, because these tales, stories and beliefs, they were who we were. So yes, by some today, these traditions and beliefs are not forgotten. There are still even some of my closest friends who believe in the Sídhe, and nothing will change their minds. Educated, insightful people who still have the beliefs of their ancestors' ways. Even trees and certain pieces of land and different areas, such as fairy forts and ring forts, used to be a huge part of Irish lives and culture. Farmers, landowners, and everyday villagers would never dare move, investigate, or tamper with them bushes. Stay away from the bush, lads. Afraid to invoke and again insult the wrath of the Sídhe. They were sacred places, old places, and these trees can still be found across Ireland today. And now, in modern times of dying out current religions and where we are in the progression of science, people are less likely to believe, just the way things happen. But they will still not dare risk moving or or cutting down any of them bushes. Be they Catholics, Protestants, atheists, agnostics, you name it, there is still a pause, just in case of bad luck for them or what could befall their family. It is just too ingrained in our culture. These fairy trees are very recognisable because a lot of them are actually found in the middle of the field. Hawthorn, for example, are always associated with the little folk. And now we must speak of the other place, the other realm, the fairy realm. This Alice in Wonderland, DMT'd, ayahuasca'd, out of time, next dimension, which is known as the fairy realm. For thousands of years, people truly accepted that there was a different dimension. And apparently there were many, many ways to gain entry to this place. Hollow hills, caves, and even holes in the ground. Or to be taken by the fair folk, which was apparently a very common thing back in those days. Usually a lot of the people saying this came back soaked in whiskey and the taste of regret in their mouth, but dozens and dozens of poems and stories about this realm have been written over the span of centuries, even by such prolific writers as W.B. Yeats and Oscar Wilde. But if you were not invited there was no way of entry, and anyone who dared tried paid dearly. Firstly, it was believed that this realm is where the Tuatha Dé Danann fled after they were defeated in a great battle. Some sources describe them as the survivors of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who retreated into the other world, the fairy realm, the mortal sons of the Milesians, who, like many early invaders of Ireland, came from Iberia, a place we will speak again in another video about. As part of the terms of their surrender to the Milesians, the Tuatha Dé Danann agreed to retreat and dwell underground. These entry points, or magical portals, as you could call them, that are only allowed gods and fairies to come and go between the two worlds whenever they chose. So an invisible world that coexists with the world of humans, described as a parallel universe in which the Sidhe walk amongst the living. Another theory in age-old Celtic beliefs is that the fairy realm was also the famous land of Tír na nÓg, which in the old Irish tongue translates to the land of the young, and we will speak about Uiscín and Tír na nÓg very soon. Legend has it that the enchanted land could be found west of Ireland, far across the stormy sea, and those who dwelt there escaped death for eternity and remained youthful and strong. So the tales of the fairy folk just absolutely used to captivate and entrance my mind as a child, and still even do to this very day. I love reading the old Irish Sidhe stories because it brings me straight back to how I used to feel. And I like to think back and imagine a time centuries and centuries ago in Ireland, a time without electricity, indoor heating, or even a roof over some people's heads. That these stories, much like the Nordic Norse mythologies, with Odin, Freya, and Balder, are ways of making my culture understand these things are happening in this absolute madhouse of a world that we live in. Things that they did not just understand yet. Or stories we telling down the pub, in front of a roaring fire, surrounded by laughter and the lads. But still, walking down a long Irish rural road, the pitch black of night will make anyone, no matter who, their imaginations will burn with imagination. There is still so much more to be going into about the Irish fair folk and the people who believed in them. But as I mentioned, they'll be coming up in future videos. I just want to say thank you very much for listening. If you like, please do. If you share, even better. We'll talk soon, guys.